Fill her up.
You're listening to the Gas Digital Network.
You're listening to Part of the Problem on the Gas Digital Network.
How can you be the freest country in the world when you lock more of your own people in cages than any other country in the world? The lesson of 9/11 should have been to never fund another young rebel group in this part of the world again. America started as the smallest government in history, and it's become the biggest government in world history. At the end of the day, it's all about freedom.
Here's your host, Dave Smith.
Oh, yeah. Here we go. What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Part of the Problem. I am Dave Smith. He is Rob the Fire Bernstein. We are here with a brand new episode for you good Christians, and I do apologize that we're starting a little bit late. For once, it was not my fault.
He's lying.
No,
it was his fault. He had a baby. He doesn't show up to places on time anymore.
I was here early.
No.
Okay?
Fake news.
That is no. You are fake news. See how I trumped you and turned it right around on you? All you got to do is repeat it back to them. No, it was those believe you me jerk faces.
I don't believe anything they say anymore.
That's right. Well, this is what happens when you put a Puerto Rican and a Brit together.
Why are those very late running groups?
Well, I don't know. Why did God put them so far apart? God didn't make no mistakes.
That's true. Kept the Puerto Ricans far just to make sure that they wouldn't be late to stuff.
He goes, when God was designing the world, he was like, I want to make sure that there will be no half British, half Puerto Rican broadcasts. Originally, Puerto Rico was like around where Massachusetts is. But then God was like, we better give them a little more buffer.
I would think
Make sure these Brits and Ricans don't start taking shit over.
The Britoricans?
The Britoricans.
When you say that, they do sound threatening.
Yeah.
A Britorican.
Imagine that accent with that propensity to crime. It just wouldn't work well together.
Because I would think if you were keeping groups of people separate, it would be whatever resulted in like Hitler or Mao, not just Puerto Ricans and Brits.
No, ironically, that's when the races get too pure. It can also tip on the other end of the spectrum.
God really just didn't think this one out.
Well, you know, he's only human. I don't really understand this religious stuff yet, but I love you, God. You're good. God is good. God gave me a beautiful little baby girl. Now, if God could try to talk to her about
and
getting some sleep at night, that would be real. That would be super, super awesome if you could talk to her about that. Anyway, everything's going good, but man, I am not sleeping. I am not sleeping good. They say our pediatrician said it peaks at 6 weeks and then starts getting better. So my daughter, by the way, is a month old. I actually maybe tomorrow a month old. That's right, tomorrow will be 1 month. So yeah, that's pretty crazy. That month flew by. The last month of Lauren being pregnant was like a decade, and this month was like I don't even know. It's like if someone hit you with a wrench and then like you were knocked unconscious and then you get up and they're like, "How long were you out for?" And you're like, I don't know. Could have been a minute, could have been a month. I have no idea. But anyway, yeah.
I drink, so it's all just yesterday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just happened yesterday or didn't happen yesterday. That's it. There's no other concept of time.
The whole world is divided into yesterday
or not
now.
Yesterday. That's it. There's only those two categories.
That's why I like having Rob here with me. Puts a perspective on things.
That's right.
Crack appeals.
So do you not even get into bed at night? Because the thing just doesn't stop crying, or why can't you just ignore the crying?
It's not a thing. It's a person.
Is ignoring crying an option?
No.
You have to address.
I mean, it's an option. Everything's an option.
Because I'm really good at ignoring
beating
stuff.
your baby is an option.
No, I'm not saying
it's not a good one.
No, because that's taking a physical action, inaction.
No, look. I mean, there are some different schools of thought. Although I don't think anybody advocates letting your baby cry it out at 4 weeks old. But that it's like you have if you just talk to pediatricians, they're very much like behavioralists. Mm-hmm. So they'll basically tell you whatever they think works or doesn't work. But if you look at all at the psychological literature, it's really doesn't seem to indicate that you should do anything other than comfort and soothe your baby. It's really important in early life that they kind of like develop this kind of feeling that if they're upset, somebody is there to comfort them and cares about them. They're not abandoned, things like that. So it's, there's really nothing you can do. There's basically like 4 things that a crying baby wants 90% of the time. So if your baby's crying, and you do start to learn the different cries. I've already gotten onto that. Like it'll cry differently for different things. But if your baby's crying, usually it either needs to be fed, changed, burped, or swaddled. Those are usually the four
What's a
things.
swaddling?
Swaddling is like when you wrap them up in a blanket, kind of.
Oh, okay.
So you wrap them up, and it kind of like keeps their arms tight and their legs tight, and it gives them like, it's all about like simulating the womb. So they're used to being like tight like that, and babies have this like startle reflex. So every now and then the baby's just still, and then just like freaks out, and it's like this startle reflex, and that'll kind of like upset them, or if like falling asleep, that'll wake them up. So you swaddle them up, and then they just kind of they stay together. Yeah, they're weird creatures. I don't know what to tell you. But then the other thing that'll happen sometimes, they'll just like they could be gassy or have acid reflux, and they only have one speed. Like the thing about a baby is they just they cry. That's all they've got. So if their diaper's bunched up and it's pinching their side, or if you chopped their foot off, they're gonna have basically the same reaction. It's gonna be like a hysterical cry.
Babies overreact.
They really do.
You know?
Oh, it's really it's amazing. Having a baby, it's unlike any other relationship you'll ever have in life. It's so one-sided. The baby does nothing. I mean, she brings nothing to the table. She doesn't contribute money to the household. She doesn't clean, cook, never even says thank you for everything we do for her. And you just live for this baby. It's like anything you need, you come first. Everything, it's fun. It's this very, very, different relationship than anything you'll ever have in your life. And for all of that, the baby just yells at you when you mess up. Doesn't even like hit you with the, hey, thanks. Hey, Pop, I know this has been challenging, but I appreciate everything you're doing. It's just like, you did this wrong. Ah! And, it's tough. But then she just looks at you with this adorable, perfect look for a second. And you're like, I'm happier than I've ever been in my entire life.
It was all worth it.
And yeah, it's some type of weird mind game.
Yeah,
they trick you into
Call
it.
your moms.
Yeah.
They work so hard, and you just grew up to be a big old disappointment.
Oh my God. It really does, though. It is,
It makes you think.
It's drastically changed my relationship with both my wife and my mother. As with your wife, you're just kind of like, it's a very weird feeling where, okay, so with Lauren, it's like, oh man, I'll never pay you back.
I owe you
like,
one.
I will, but it's not just I owe you one, it's I owe you one barred. Like
Right.
for infinity, I owe you one. There's never going to be a time, we'd never be on even footing again. I will always be grateful to you, and I will never be able to give
I feel
that
like
back
you're not
to
supposed
you.
to say that out loud.
Oh yeah, no, she doesn't listen to the podcast.
Yeah, no.
No, I'll never let
You
her
never
know
put that on the record.
Of course.
Yeah.
No, bury yourself. But then with your mom, it's like, oh fuck, I get it.
Yeah.
I'm an asshole. Like every argument you ever thought you were right with your mom, you weren't. She was right. I mean, unless your mother was like horrifically abusive or something like that. But other than that, it's basically like, no, you're an asshole. You're an asshole. You just burst out of her fucking vagina. She just squeezed a bowling ball through her butthole, basically, to give you life. And then just wiped your ass for years. Like, could you imagine if it's just a person? Let's say, take it was like an old man or something like that. Like, who you just decided, out of the goodness of your heart, they weren't paying you, they weren't doing anything. You were just like, I'm going to go take care of this old person. I'm going to go volunteer. And every day, you're like, I'll buy everything. I'll buy the groceries. I'm going to wipe this old man's ass. I'm going to change this old man's diapers. I'm going to take him here. I'll put on whatever thing he wants to watch. I'll take him wherever he wants to go. I'll feed him. I'll do everything. I'll comfort him when he's not feeling well. And then, like, like a few years after doing this, he like disagreed with what time you put something on, and he was like, I'm pissed off at you. And you'd be like, are you fucking kidding me, man? I do everything for you. Like, it doesn't matter what the argument is. It's like, you're just wrong. That's every time you've been a jerk to your mother. Anyway, but the flip side of that is that nothing makes that woman happier than having a granddaughter. It is unbelievable. Grandmothers, my mother and Lauren's mother both are they just melt over this little girl. And they give us a little break for a second, so that's pretty nice too. All right. Anyway, enough about that. Let's get back to the scripture. Jesus said that, today is Rand Paul's birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to Rand Paul. Yeah, it's been an interesting relationship me and Rand Paul have had. I mean, I've only met the guy twice, but so we don't
No,
actually
he
have a
checks
relationship.
in. He wants to know.
Yeah,
Where's he at on the Dave Smith chart?
I'm sure he probably almost never misses an episode.
Why would he?
But Rand Paul, like, I think it's been very hard for a lot of people in my ideological camp to get past the heartbreak that we felt over a lot of Rand Paul just not being what we wanted him to be. And I may never get over it. It's like, I remember Scott Horton said once, when it was the first time I had Scott Horton on the podcast, and I had been a huge fan of his for like years before that. And then we started building up like an audience, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to try to get Scott Horton on, because this guy's like he's a genius. I just want to talk to him about this stuff. And little did I know, I probably could have had him on years before, because I didn't realize how like approachable Scott was. Like, he's just like, oh yeah, I'm down to do it. Let's fucking talk. But we were talking about, this is probably back in 2016, and we were talking about the Rand Paul presidential campaign. And I remember Scott said, and I just thought he said it perfectly, but he was like, look, I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this. It's the worst thing that's ever happened in the history of the world. And that's perfectly how I feel about Rand Paul. It's like, it was a Greek tragedy what happened to Rand Paul. When Ron Paul started this libertarian movement, was changing people's mind, was really threatening to, like the establishment. The only political candidate who was actually inserting the issues that mattered into the like general perception, like actually like, hey, we're going to talk about the Fed. No one ever talked about the Fed, at least not from a critical point of view. If you talked about the Fed, it was like they're the wise overlords. Like, he was like, no, they are creating the recessions. It's these guys in a fucking smoky, dark room where no one gets to know about what they're doing. He talked about that, talked about the wars and what the real cause of terrorism and all this amazing stuff. And but he was getting older. And it was clear he didn't have that much time left to kind of keep building this thing. And then a lot of us started realizing, like, oh man, what if we just had a younger Ron Paul? We could, like, maybe the future would be just amazing. And then all of a sudden, his fucking son announces that he's going to run. And it was like, oh shit, we do. And not only that, but he fucking won. And not only that, but he was a senator. Not just in the House, he's a fucking senator. We got Ron Paul's kid in the Senate. And let me tell you something, Rand Paul is not, and this is in some ways what was more frustrating about Rand Paul than, say, someone like Gary Johnson. So Gary Johnson would be like, he's representing the Libertarian Party, and therefore in many people's eyes just libertarianism in general. And I remember this one time, I think it was in 2011, 2012, where he was on a radio interview, and someone asked him what his thoughts on Rothbard were, and he said, "I'm not sure who we're talking about." And it was like, Murray Rothbard, you're not familiar with him? And he goes, I have to confess, I haven't heard of him. And it's like, so that's Gary Johnson. Gary Johnson doesn't know any of this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's almost, with Gary Johnson, it's almost like getting angry at a dog. You know what I mean? Like, after a while, you're like, well, he just doesn't know any of this stuff. I mean, I don't know how, like, what type of lack of intellectual curiosity you have to be the presidential nominee for the LP and to not have heard of Murray Rothbard. Like, really? I mean, okay, I'm not saying you have to agree with him on everything, but you've never been interested in picking up a Rothbard book, reading an article or two by him. The guy wrote like 50 fucking books or something like that. It's like, he wrote a lot, and he's the libertarian intellectual. Anyway. But in a different way, what was frustrating about Rand is that Rand has read all this stuff. Like, I know this. I've seen him talk about Mises and Rothbard and all these guys. He's read all of it. Like, he knows his shit. And Rand Paul will, every now and then, he'll just show you how well read he is. Like, every now and then he'll just be talking, and he's like, whatever. He's like, Adams said about war, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, he just, for whatever reason, when it came down to his political career, he went in the direction of not being his father and being much more of a moderate and much more of a, like, I'll just be like the most libertarian leaning member of the establishment, but I'm not going to be the anti-establishment guy. And that was tough. But sometimes, I'll never like completely get over that because it was so heartbreaking to me because he had such a golden opportunity to keep the Ron Paul movement going. But maybe the other side of it is that maybe it's a little bit unfair for me to judge him by the standard of his father. Because if Rand Paul's last name wasn't Paul, I would probably just be celebrating how great he was. And the guy has almost definitely probably the best senator who ever lived. He's probably got the best voting record in the history of the Senate. He's even though the 2016 presidential campaign was a flop, I'm just, we're all kind of thankful that Rand Paul is in the Senate. And if he wasn't, it would just be a much more bleak picture. And I don't know exactly what the truth is to what his relationship with President Trump is. It's been like reported that he's the one who convinced Trump to decide to pull the troops out of Syria. I don't know if that's true or not. But either way, I know for a fact that he talks to the president a lot and that he's talked about all this stuff. And hey, thank God there's at least somebody out there who's talking about that stuff. There's at least somebody out there who's got a bit of integrity, who's like, if he rails against Obama's spending for years and then the Republicans take over and they're like, here's our budget where we're going to spend even more. He's just like, no, I'm not fucking voting for this. And it's just nice. It's nice to have a guy like that. So anyway, happy birthday, Rand Paul. Rand Paul is at not the easiest last year. I believe he was shot at and beaten up.
What was he shot at? I don't remember. I remember getting beat up.
When that guy Scalise got shot at the on the baseball field.
Game?
He was there. Yeah, he was like laying belly down in the outfield.
I guess proving my point from earlier, I did not remember that was last year. I thought that was way.
Well, that might have been
back.
the year before last year. That might have been. I can't remember when that was, but he maybe I was wrong.
The old Senate ball game.
Yeah, but he's had a rough go of it.
But his wife's still super hot. So
hot wife. You got a good life at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about. But anyway, happy birthday to Rand Paul. I hope he keeps doing great work. And maybe, it took Ron Paul a while to figure out how to be a really effective kind of like messenger. So maybe he'll get better at it. Maybe over time he'll realize there's no point in fucking
you get older
back.
And you stop giving a shit.
Mm-hmm.
That's the nice thing about getting older.
That was one of the great things about Ron Paul. It was just kind of this thing where he's like, look,
I'm old.
Done. I'm old. I'm out of here. I don't care. I don't care about making some deal. I don't care about securing this thing in my future. I'm just ready to tell the goddamn truth. That's it. Like do you remember that episode of the Twilight Zone where it was like, fuck, I'm gonna mess this up. But it was like some like socialist dystopia like type thing, and there was just this one old man who just kind of tells the truth. All right, yeah, I haven't seen it in years, but I have to remember it's just this one old man who's like, this is crap, and like it's just amazing. And then I think he ends up killing the guy, and I think it was like a bomb that he gives him. Anyway, so
it's a pretty hazy memory.
Yeah, it wasn't great. There were a lot of episodes of the Twilight Zone. They were all kind of the same.
I always liked the intro was great. That dude was talking, the noises.
Love the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, I always just remember the one where things got too hot. That one. And then one with the dinosaurs. And the really ugly lady who was just a normal looking lady.
Yeah, and then at the end they all have a pig face, but she's like beautiful. Mm-hmm. And then they bring in some beautiful guy and he's like, we can go to a place where they don't judge people like us. And he's like, you guys are hot. But everything was flipped upside down. It was always interesting. I mean, I'm sure they had like a bunch of bad ones because they made a lot of them. But there were some really good ones in there. All right, guys, let's take a quick second and thank our awesome sponsor for today's show, which is Beachbody On Demand, an unbelievable service. Beachbody On Demand is an easy-to-use streaming service that gives you instant access to a wide variety of super effective workouts that you can do from the comfort of your living room, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I love this product. As I've told you guys before, I know it's been my experience and that of many others that I never get a really good workout if I just go to the gym alone. I always need either to work with a personal instructor or to take some sort of class, and then I end up pushing myself. But the problem is that personal instructors are very expensive and the classes are expensive and they only go for certain times, so you have to fit them into your busy schedule. That's where Beachbody On Demand comes in. They've got all these great classes and you can do them right from your computer at your own convenience. This is the company that was behind P90X, Insanity, 21 Day Fix, Brazilian butt lifts, hip hop abs, a whole bunch of other great programs that have been that people really love. They've got the best trainers. You can work out on your own schedule. You can access them anywhere you can get an internet signal, and they have a huge huge support community. Over 1 million people currently on Beachbody On Demand. You should really check it out. I've been using the Insanity program. Now that I got a baby, I got to get in shape, got to be a good role model to my kids. So I'm trying to really get back into shape, and this Insanity program has been kicking my ass. So I love it. It's really great. Anyway, if you want to check this out now, my listeners can get a special free trial membership. It includes their new 14-day results plan where you can lose up to 9 pounds in the first 2 weeks. All you got to do is text the word problem to 303030. So you text the word problem to 303030, and they're going to give you that 14-day results plan with a special free trial. So it's a great product. I highly recommend you check it out. Again, text problem to 303030. Beachbody On Demand. All right, let's get back into the show. Okay, so I also wanted to, because we had a long podcast last time, and we ended up running over, and which is, sorry guys, this has just always been one of my weaknesses is time management. I'm as a comedian, as a podcaster, all of it, I'm terrible with it. I can't even manage down to like a 10-minute set. In my mind, I'll be like, oh, okay, I'll do like this joke, this joke, this joke, this joke, and then it's always either like, oh, okay, I just got the light, the light meaning I'm up to 9 minutes of the 10-minute set, and I'm like, I still have 3 jokes left to do, or I finish all of them, and it's 6 minutes into the set, and I'm just terrible with managing time. And I'm like that on podcasts too. I'll be like, oh, these topics should probably take, an hour and a half, and then it's like an hour and 50 minutes, and I'm like, I still haven't talked about what I wanted to. But I did have a couple more thoughts on the Tucker Carlson thing. Which was really, I wasn't exact. Sometimes there's something that bothers me, and I can't quite figure out why. You're just something about this really sticks with me. And then I sit there kind of thinking about why is it particularly that bugged me so much. And I guess the thing that really bugged me was the acceptance that Tucker Carlson had of the idea that Republicans stand for capitalism. I think that's what really bugged me at the end of the day was he was like, you can't criticize markets. And I assume he must just be talking about Republicans because he was talking about the spectrum from libertarians to social conservatives. I mean, if you're talking about the left, like Democrats and then further left-wing people, the Green Party or anything like that, or, the left wing of the Democrats, the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, if you were to say that they can't criticize capitalism, that you might need to be institutionalized. I mean, you'd have to be crazy to think that they just say capitalism is fine. I mean, truthfully speaking, if you walk into, say, 90% of, college campuses or Hollywood ballroom parties or something like that, and you were to say, I'm for socialism or I'm for capitalism, there is no debate that I'm for capitalism would be a much more controversial statement, and saying I'm for socialism would probably just get you praised. No one would care about that. But I guess what he's talking about is on the Republican side. And to actual libertarian laissez-faire capitalists, it's just insane to think that Paul Ryan actually stands for free markets, that the Speaker of the House, who is, last I checked in the Constitution, the House is the one who was in charge of the purse strings, and the Speaker of the House, who just presided over the government spending more money than any government in the history of humanity, is supposed to be some Randian laissez-faire guy. It's like how do you even have that impression? And I guess what it comes down to really is just their rhetoric, because the Republicans will claim to be for small government or capitalism and free markets and things like that, and then the Democrats will claim to be for more, like democracy and social safety net and things like this. But it's not, rhetoric isn't reality necessarily, and this is where someone like Barack Obama could talk like a dove and no one would criticize him for being such a hawk, because he would just say that he's a dove. So it's well, okay, I guess that's what he is then. And it just seemed crazy to me to have that perception. But so the thing I just wanted to add was this is how I look at it. To me, this is how it is. This is the way the game works. Okay. you have, a lot of people will say there's like a, when they talk about Trump derangement syndrome, or the idea that the media is just really anti-Trump, which is obviously true. But that's not a new thing. People have been saying for years and years, people have been complaining about the media bias. And one of the things that people would always complain about was the, remember the term, the liberal media? Like you don't really hear that so much anymore. But that was like the term that Bill O'Reilly and guys like that used to use all the time, right? The idea that there's like this liberal media. So the media is made up of a bunch of liberals. And there certainly has always been some truth to that, but I really think that the media has always had a statist bias. I don't really think of it so much as a liberal bias or a left-wing bias. It's much more of a statist bias. They have a bias towards state power. And just to use an example for that, it's like, if you look at George W. Bush and the run-up to the war in Iraq, the whole media basically just bowed down and complied to him on that. And likewise, if you look at Donald Trump, for all the heat he may get, I mean, how much heat is he getting for his deficits or for, increasing spending and signing all that into law? Very, very little. There's no, if he were to come to which is quite possible that we'll see in the next year, some type of, awful infrastructure bill where they just spend a ton of money on domestic nonsense, he'll get no heat from that, from the media. And it's, you see, if he wants to end a war, that's where he'll get a whole lot of heat. If he wants to rein in power from anyone, if he wants to deregulate the energy sector, that's where he'll start getting pushback from the media. So it's not that, to me, the media has like a left-wing bias or a right-wing bias. It's like a pro-state bias. It's like they basically are there to support the state getting more and more power. And the way it works is it's professional wrestling. That's the whole thing. It's professional wrestling. You have the Democrats and the Republicans, and they play the good guys and the bad guys. And they, in front of the cameras, they hate each other. They fight it out. They argue. It's a scripted battle. They all know what's going to happen at the end of it. And then, after the cameras go away, they all go out and grab drinks together and they're friends. And this is like what's always been the case. This is always like, Ronald Reagan and, who's it? Tipper? No, who was the speaker under Reagan? Oh, I'm blanking. But anyway, they'd go out together and grab drinks and stuff like that. And it's just a pro wrestling thing. Like, we pretend to have big differences, but at the end of the day, we don't. And the roles that they play are, the Republicans claim to be for freedom, limited government, and markets, and the Democrats claim to be for more of a role for government. And that's why, in the media's eyes, the Democrats play the good guys and the Republicans play the bad guys. It's not so much that there's like a liberal bias. It's just that they cast the ones who are for capitalism as the bad guys. And that way, most people are rooting for the bad guys to lose, or at least that's what the intended outcome. And so it's like, this is why you see when left-wing people used to criticize Paul Ryan for being some crazy, he wants to slash your Medicaid and slash your Medicare and throw Granny off the cliff. And it's like, really, his plan was to I think his plan balanced the budget in 40 years or something like that. It's like this ridiculous plan. He's not cutting any government. He's like, well, if we can just not grow the government quite as big as the Democrats do. And you just ask yourself, is this actually someone who's for free market capitalism? Or is this someone who's playing the role of the heel so you can blame everything on capitalism? And that's what was fucking infuriating me about Tucker Carlson. It's like, you're just buying into this false premise that anybody here, including Donald Trump, that any of them actually stand for capitalism, while we have the biggest state in the history of the world. And he's complaining about things like, he's like, the rest of us pay this income tax, these high rates, while the rich people get away with just paying their capital gains rates. It's like, right. And this is free markets to you? I mean, it's like, you do realize that a progressive income tax was one of the 10 planks of communism. That's where that shit comes from. This has nothing to do with free markets. And anyway, I guess that was just still bugging me. I wanted to get some of that off my chest. All right, guys, let's take a quick second and tell you about our wonderful sponsor for today's show, a brand new sponsor that I love, and it is People's Choice Beef Jerky, LA's original small batch beef jerky. This stuff is delicious. They sent us a bunch of it, and I really, really loved it. Me and my wife were eating a bunch of it the other day. Loved the small batch cowboy peppered. Unbelievable. The best beef jerky I've ever had in my life. Unlike mass-produced beef jerky, People's Choice beef jerky is marinated, sliced, and cooked by hand. That's right, People's Choice beef jerky is handmade in small batches, and you can taste it. As I said, personally, the cowboy peppered I thought was just phenomenal, but a bunch of the stuff is just unbelievable. As you know, it's the new year. Beef jerky is great for staying healthy. It's high protein. You keep it in your desk at work. It makes a quick, healthy meal or snack. So it's the new year. Start things out right. I know you guys have those New Year's resolutions to be healthier. This is a great way to do it. Check out People's Choice handcrafted premium beef jerky, or you can go to peopleschoicebeefjerky.com. And if you go to peopleschoicebeefjerky.com and use promo code POTP15, they will give you 15% off any purchase. So as I said, this stuff is really, really tasty. I think you're going to love it. Go check it out at peopleschoicebeefjerky.com. All right, let's get back into the show. So anyway, Tucker Carlson does good work, but he was dead wrong about all that shit. Sometimes I wish they were right. I wish more people were functionally libertarian, as he says. Like, I would take the heat if we got any of what we wanted. You know what I mean? Like, you could blame libertarians for the state of society if you would just give us 10% of what we're asking for. But then they give us nothing, and we're supposed to still, I don't know, still take the blame. Doesn't seem right, Rob.
Isn't it interesting that they feel somewhat threatened by us? That they keep trying to address and attribute all the problems to the libertarians? And
yes,
there's none of us.
Yeah.
There's none of us. And we're not making any decisions in this country. Well, they don't even really influence decisions all that much.
Well, if you just think about it, right? Like, say Ron Paul's campaign in 2008, right? So it's been, 10 years, 11 years since that campaign. And if you say Ron Paul came out and he said, look, this is what we need to do, okay? What we need to do is drastically cut government spending. We need to end all of these wars that we're involved in the Middle East. We need to audit the Federal Reserve. We need to end the war on drugs. We need to, whatever. List off all of the things. Not only did we not do any of them, we went in the exact opposite direction. We were like, okay, we're going to, instead of cutting government spending, we're going to increase government spending. Instead of ending wars in the Middle East, we're going to spread them to 6 or 7 more theaters. Instead of auditing the Federal Reserve, we're going to have quantitative easing 1, 2, and 3. And they're going to buy up more assets than ever before. Like, they followed the opposite of everything that he prescribed. And then any problem that we have today, you'll still see a bunch of them going, capitalism, libertarians. And it's like, these two things can't exist together. It's got to be one or the other. You could either follow one of the 10 things that he suggested and then blame us for everything when it falls, or just go, hey, we didn't listen to those guys. Now let's see how this is working out. But to take something as complicated as the family dynamics breaking down and to just blame it on the praise of the market, it's just so insane to me. Yeah. Anyway, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? So, what did we want to start with?
Oh, we had big stuff.
Big stuff.
Big stuff.
What do we got?
We got that good-looking socialist lady.
Yeah.
She's out there preaching her socialist words, and everyone's kind of... She's dangerous, man. I'm going to say, she's dangerous.
She is definitely dangerous, no question about that. Hey, I did actually want to pull up a couple clips, but sorry for not getting those to you guys earlier, but the Brit and the Rican were ruining everything.
Dangerous almost makes her sound more intriguing, so I want to clarify that when I say dangerous, I actually think that her rhetoric can catch hold with people and that she's distributing really, really bad ideas. Yeah, well,
I agree with, both of those points. And I think that, look, there's a reason why she got, what she was able to do was pretty incredible. This is a chick in her 20s who came out and closed like a 40-point gap in the last 2 weeks to win her seat in Congress. And that's something. And she beat like the number 3 guy in Congress. Like it's no joke. And there's something to her rhetoric being powerful. Now, it certainly is divisive and it turns a lot of people off, and she kind of speaks like she's not so bright.
So,
but that doesn't. But it would have been easy. So go ahead, make your point.
Yeah, here's the not bright thing, because we look at it and go, "Hey, this isn't bright. There's no reason behind this." But what we fail to see is most people, they don't care for reason. People don't want reason. They don't want logic. They want someone who goes, "Hey, we can be really good people, live rich lives, and help the poor. And I've got a way to do it." No one wants real solutions. No one cares. So from a sales perspective, the fact that she doesn't even care to try and attribute reasons, and she just pretends like she has solutions, and she speaks very well to her ability to create fairness and equality, it's going to work.
Yeah, I
mean, not that her ideas are going to work.
No,
it's
but
that will catch hold with people. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think there's.
It's you and I that want the guy who can come up and go, "Hey, I can restore the budget, and it's going to be this, and here, look at this chart." And
clearly, that's not most people. All right, so let's. If you guys could just, we'll talk for another minute. But what I wanted to pull up was, if you just Google Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Anderson Cooper, probably some clips could come up. Or even if you just Google Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and see what videos pop up. Because there were a couple clips in there that I thought were really interesting that were worth talking about. And I know they're being hit, like a lot of people are jumping on her, but I'm really more... I don't want to just treat this as like a gotcha type thing. I thought there were some things that were truly revealing about who she is and how she looks at the world. And yeah, I do agree with you that it is. It is but dangerous, terrifying, and dangerous.
I'm reading Scott Adams' book, Win Bigly. It's really interesting. He kind of breaks down why he predicted that Trump will win. And she does what Trump does so well on the opposite side, where firstly, she says ridiculous things, which forces all of us to talk about it. And it creates so much press and publicity for her. She's a huge figure. She's basically as big as like Bernie Sanders is now, coming out of nowhere, just because she'll go so hardcore with her nutty point of views.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think there's some real wisdom. And Scott Adams has some real insights into like that area of public communication. And there's something, it's easy. And this is kind of similar. I mean, I'm not saying it's the exact same thing, but there's similarities between that and the Trump phenomenon, which is that it's very easy to just dismiss them right away. And to a lot of people who are, somewhat like elitist. And I put us in that category too, because even people like us who are just like kind of like, well, you should form your political opinions by like reading Rothbard and Mises or something like that. You're like, there's something a little elitist about that.
The fuck's going to sit down and read a book?
Nobody's doing that, man. Like that's not how people operate in this space. And so it's easy for us to just look at her and dismiss her and be like, oh my God, you haven't even considered the arguments against socialism and you don't even know about the price calculation problem. You know what I mean? But that's a little bit of an elitist attitude. And to dismiss someone who's already done what she's done would be silly.
She's basically walking around going, I just think that government should be nice to everybody. And they go, well, there's really no practical way for governments. No, we could do it. And that's attractive for people to hear. Yeah. That's more attractive than what anyone else is saying. So they'll go, yeah, let's go with her idea. She sounds like she wants to do nice things.
Yeah, there's something to that. Hey, what did you guys come up with? Do you have any clips up there? Could you show them to me on the screen? I just want to take a look and we'll see what...
The only good thing is she could potentially push the Democrats so left that they can't actually win real elections. Because I think she is going to push the Democrats more left with basically everything that her and Sanders kind of make popular.
I think quite possibly. Here, hold on. Let me see that again. Not this clip that you had up. So let me just see what other ones came up. Could you just show me the screen? All right, so what do we got? Can you make it a little bigger? Because I can't really read it in here. Okay. Okay, how about the people more concerned? That one. Yeah. This I thought was a very interesting clip that really shows the mentality. Okay, let's. Oh, by the way, before we play this clip, let me just say, just to back up your point, because this is what I was thinking of, that I remember saying, I don't know if you remember this, when Ben Shapiro challenged her to a debate. So Ben Shapiro challenged Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to a debate. And said, he said something like, I'll offer $10,000 to the charity of your choice if you debate me on democratic socialism, something along those lines. And she said, I forget exactly what she said, but it was something along the lines of, she goes, much like men who catcall, I know Ben Shapiro feels entitled to a response from me, but actually you're not entitled to a response from me. And everyone on Ben Shapiro's side was like, oh, what a victory for Ben Shapiro. Like, she's scared to debate and she won't. And I felt like I was one of the few people who was like, no, that was brilliant. That was a brilliant response by her, because I know to your side, to the Ben Shapiro side, they're like, see, facts don't care about your feelings and she's afraid to debate capitalism versus socialism. But to everyone on her side, they went, yup, that's right. Catcalling. You hit this emotional trigger.
Girl power.
We're completely on your side. Here's a typical man trying to make you look bad, and you stood right up to him and said, you don't deserve my time. Like, that resonates with her side. And the reason why I think that's brilliant is because at the end of it, she makes it so like, okay, so Ben Shapiro's people thought he won. Her people now rally behind hers. And if she had accepted the debate, she would get stomped. I mean, she would get stomped into the ground, something out of American History X, if she tried to debate Ben Shapiro. So it was way smarter from her point of view to go, no, let me just swing this right into a sexism issue. Like, you can hate it, and I hate it too, but that's the shit that's fucking effective. That's what works. And so she's got some, it's kind of like, in a way, I know it's different, but I see some similarities. There's something Trumpian about that, where she's not book smart. She hasn't like, and I don't even know that she's not book smart, but with the issues she talks about, she does not demonstrate a powerful understanding of these issues, but she's got instincts for politics. And there's something, when she was asked on the Late Show, what does it mean to be a democratic socialist? And she said, being a democratic socialist means that in a modern moral society, no one should be too poor to live. Like, that type of fluff and nonsense. But I remember we were breaking it down, and I was like, well, what's the implication here? If you think my position as a radical democratic socialist is no one should be so poor, too poor to live, or no one, then your position, essentially the other side is, they believe that people should be so poor they die. So the implication is like that there's this immoral group that she's fighting against. And I don't really need to prove to you what democratic socialism is. I just need to tell you I'm on the good side. I care about people.
Now, let me ask you, who's behind her? Who coaches her? When I watch these answers, they're slick. They're prepared. She knows.
I don't know. See, this is again what I think is kind of similar to Trump. I actually don't get the impression that she's very handled. That's not the impression I get at all. I get the impression that she's got instincts for this thing and is kind of going unhandled. And that's why she'll make mistakes and she'll get numbers wrong and things like that. But she's still got this kind of, core that's appealing to people. And the thing, and if you look at, say, I don't know if you saw, Elizabeth Warren did that stream where she's drinking the beer all weird and she's like talking to her husband. It was this stream that she did this at, and she just looks completely, it's like when Hillary Clinton's talking about hot sauce. It's just it just reeks of an inauthentic person trying to be authentic. But when Ocasio-Cortez does those streams of her like cooking in her kitchen, that's her. You're looking at the real thing. Like, this is the person.
She's done that?
I
haven't seen those.
Yeah, she is being herself, and there's something about that resonates. This is the thing with Donald Trump, right? For as many political instincts that he had that ended up being great, that got him to the president, you never would have sat down in a room with people, with the experts, with the political strategists, and run these ideas by them and gotten it out of the room. Never. If you had sit there and said, like, well, what if they bring up John McCain and his war hero status? You'd be like, how about you just tell him he's not a war hero because you like people who don't get captured? What do you think about that for a strategy? All these guys who make millions of dollars a year, this huge industry, would have been like, that's insane. You'll be done if you do that. This will destroy your campaign. But he wasn't listening to those guys, and he just went and did it, and it worked. For him, it worked. And a big part of that is because, however you feel about Donald Trump, it was authentic what he was doing. He was just giving you his real answer. And in this world of phony politicians, there was something about Donald Trump that a lot of people found refreshing. A lot of people hated it, but a lot of people, and enough to make him the president, were like, you know what? I like the guy who at least I know who he is. I know where he stands. And luckily for him, he happened to be running against Hillary Clinton, who is the epitome of fake politician. Okay, so let's play that clip that we had pulled up from Ocasio-Cortez.
Hey.
Or just let's take a look at Rob Bernstein.
Since the election, some conservative media outlets have focused on Ocasio-Cortez with an intensity unusual for a rookie member of Congress.
Her views, her policy positions are actually downright scary.
She's been accused of being dishonest about the true cost of her proposals and the tax burden they would impose on the middle class. She's also been criticized for making factual mistakes.
One of the criticisms of you is that your math is fuzzy. The Washington Post recently awarded you 4 Pinocchios.
Oh, my goodness.
For misstating some statistics about Pentagon spending.
If people want to really blow up one figure here or one word there, I would argue that they're missing the forest for the trees. I think that there's a lot of people more concerned about being precisely, factually, and semantically correct than about being morally right.
Okay,
But
let's
being factually
pause that
correct is
there.
important.
It's absolutely.
And then I love that. Okay, so then even Anderson Cooper, even hard left Anderson
She's
Cooper
like-
has to go. But I mean, being factually correct is important, right? And she goes, oh yeah, it is. But now there is something there
She's got an autistic wordsmith quality to her where it's completely blank thought behind it, but she actually articulates her nonsense well.
But this is the thing that reminds me a little bit of Trump. This is why I agree with you when you made that comparison, is that there is something amazing to being called out. They're like, look, the Washington Post gave you 4 Pinocchios. The headline on the Washington Post that they show on the screen is Ocasio-Cortez's $21 trillion mistake. That's how far off she was with the numbers that she cited. She was $21 trillion off. She makes mistakes that are like, and not even just mistakes, like he said, the fuzzy math, the pretending things add up that are nowhere near adding up. And she says her response is a lot of people are so obsessed with being factually accurate instead of being morally correct.
Do you understand how smart that answer is?
Now, but it is Trumpian. It's brilliant idiocy.
Yeah.
It's an insane thing to say. But there's the two things, right? There's 2 aspects of it that are important and worth mentioning. Number one is that it reveals something about the left-wing and democratic socialist mindset, which is always that we're the good guys and you're the bad guys. It doesn't matter. The details, the little facts, getting something together, it doesn't matter. I'm on team good and you're on team evil. So right away when someone says, oh, well, you've gotten all this stuff wrong, she's like, well, I think it's more important to, it's not so important to get everything right as it is to not be evil. And that's the response right away. Well, whatever. I mean, I may have gotten some numbers mixed up, but I'm good. So who cares? You know what I mean? Like, that's more or less the response. And so that's the number one point, that it's very revealing that you just like, that's the way you look at things. Hey, you're wrong about this. No reflection of like, yeah, I did mess up. I got to get this right. It's just, well, yeah, but it's more important. You're missing the forest for the trees. You're here in the details. Oh, I said 700 billion and the answer was actually 30 billion, but whatever. I'm morally correct. Imagine just saying that. I mean, it's really incredible. But the second part of it is kind of what you were getting at, that actually is a politically savvy way to handle being completely wrong about something. That's actually a really, really politically savvy thing to say. Oh, yeah, well, okay. I don't know if, okay, you guys want to harp on everything that's factually wrong. Fine. How about we be good?
There's a lot of slack given also on account of the fact that she's a pretty chick. And for some reason, when someone's a pretty chick, it's harder to shatter their reality and just be like, no, listen, you fucking dumbass. You're trying to solve problems. We got to actually work through some numbers here. If it's lunacy, I don't care how much you want to claim it's morally right. If it's not truth, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
If it's going to put us $10 trillion in debt to give everyone a sandwich tomorrow, I don't care how moral it is to give everyone a sandwich. It's stupid.
Right.
But for some reason, she doesn't have to field those secondary questions that I think most people actually would.
Well, I also think that if you're, look, this is just the reality of it, and this is what I was saying before with the media pro-state bias. If you're arguing for a drastic increase in state power, you're going to face a lot less scrutiny than somebody who argued for even a modest cut. I mean, I remember when Rand Paul was arguing for the sequester, that cut like $32 billion. And you're talking about
which is nothing.
Cutting $32 billion in a $4 trillion budget.
It's literally the government sneeze fund.
Yes, it's literally nothing. It's, you know what I mean? And even that was like over years. It wasn't like in 1 year, you know. And so there, you know, he's talking about that, and he would get grilled and all these tough questions, and that's just the way it's going to be if you want to cut anything. But if you want to add $20 trillion to the budget, it's like, okay, hey, they say your math's a little fuzzy. Well, I think it's more important to be morally correct. Okay, moving on, you know. I mean, to Anderson Cooper's credit, and let's play the end of this clip because she does give, but now the reason she's like, oh, they took me out of context when I said that. But really, that was her answer. And then Anderson Cooper responded with, but it is important to be factually correct. And then she gave this follow-up, which I think is just, in my opinion, more of the same.
Actually correct is important.
It's absolutely important. And whenever I make a mistake, I say, okay, this was clumsy. And then I restate what my point was. But it's not the same thing as the president lying about immigrants. It's not the same thing at all.
All right. So there we go. So basically, her getting something wrong isn't the same as the president lying because he's a bad person and she's not. So if she's being clumsy, whereas he's a liar. The truth is that Donald Trump does lie all the time. But Donald Trump tells a lot of really insignificant lies. I'm sure there's some fairly significant ones too. But truthfully, if you're saying, I am going to completely redesign the economy from the top down, and here are the numbers, and you get those numbers wrong, that is a much more impactful and meaningful mistake than if Donald Trump says, my inauguration crowd was the biggest crowd in history. And it wasn't actually. And that's what a lot of Donald Trump's lies end up being. So, you know, she can say that, but it is revealing of how she seems to view the world. Hey, let me see what other clips came up when you had those.
Yeah, there's a good one of, if you want to look it up, where she goes that Trump is without question a racist. That was the other big highlight.
Yeah, that was a good one. That one I wanted to see. Here, let's see what other clips there are. So that one I wanted to see, and then maybe if you just go back and see what else came up. So here, yeah, no question Trump is a racist. Let's look at that one. Nope, go back to where you were. That one right there. Yep. Let's play this one. And just take it from the beginning.
I think
there are people who say you don't understand how the game is played.
Mm-hmm.
Do you?
I think it's really great for people to keep thinking that.
You want folks to underestimate you?
Absolutely. People? That's how I won my primary.
Do you believe President Trump is a racist?
Yeah. No question.
How can you say that?
When you look at the words that he uses, which are historic dog whistles of white supremacy, when you look at how he reacted to the Charlottesville incident, where neo-Nazis murdered a woman, versus how he manufactures crises like immigrants seeking legal refuge on our borders, it's night and day.
Do you have a specific on the facts?
Firstly,
I
didn't notice that, you know chiclet gum? You know, like that's her teeth. She's got the face of a barracuda fish.
She's got something very weird about her features. I mean, she's a pretty girl, but there's something like very strange about her.
That's what. Yeah, there's something strange and attractive at the same time. Her words. She's poetic, man. I don't agree with the word that she's saying, but she cuts so deep. And she's very concise. That's about a 3-word answer. She hits on every single thing.
Oh, and she hits on all the talking points.
Dog whistles racist, aligned with neo-Nazis, the
and
themes
immigration.
Of immigration's night and day. It's perfect.
It really is unbelievable for all the fucking. I don't even know what to say, man. For all the times that the idea of racism comes up. You know what's so weird, man, about people on the left? Is that it's like they're working as hard as they can to give more credence to the alt-right. It's like they're working as hard as they can to prove Richard Spencer's point. Because when you think about it, it's like all these issues from like you would think the way people on the left talk about racism and sexism in the country, you would think we were living in 1961. Like you would think that's where we are as a country. Like there's been no change since then, and that's the big issues of the day are sexism and racism, and those are the problems, and we have to view every problem through that lens. And it's almost like they start to prove someone like Richard Spencer right. Like, or they're working to try to prove him right, because after a while, I mean, I don't agree that he's right, but after a while you go like, to anyone outside of that world, you go, okay, it's 2019. It's not 1961. It's 2019. Not only has segregation been ended, not only has there been affirmative action for decades and decades, if you look at Hollywood and by any measure, there's more and more diversity than there's ever been. Basically, on a cultural level, if anyone says something racially insensitive, they're fired, they're deplatformed, they're like persona non grata in society. There's everything you could imagine, right? And then they'll still be like, oh no, there's all this racism and you're racist for dog whistling. And it's like if you were trying to lead people down the path of going like, well, then maybe just different races can't live together. I don't know. Like maybe it just can't work. I mean, if after all this effort, after all these decades, if we've tried harder than any society has ever tried to make this work, and it's still such a big problem to you, maybe we all just need to separate, man. Like, it's like you're working to prove Richard Spencer right. Now, by the way, I don't think he's right at all. I think these left-wing people are out of their fucking mind. I think he's out of his fucking mind. Truthfully speaking, when you leave this fucking dumb political scene and you leave the fucking podcast we're in now and you just go out into the world, there's people of all races living together and everybody's just fine and everyone's not obsessed with racism. Most people are just trying to do their job, get home to their families, kind of live their life, you know? There's some major problems going on in different pockets, but overall, it's kind of fine. But it's almost like when you're this obsessed with racism, and for all of the obsession of racism, it's so amazing when they actually ask you to break it down. It's like, okay, so you talk about racism all the time. Donald Trump is the face of racism in today's society. What do you got? What's the actual evidence? And the first thing they have for you is dog whistles.
Yeah.
Dog whistles. Well, I know he doesn't say anything racist, but trust me, it means something racist. It does. And he goes, the dog whistles, she actually said historic dog whistles of white supremacy. Like, white supremacists didn't dog whistle, man. None of them dog whistle. If you go look at any of those alt-right guys, listen to them. They don't dog whistle. Like Richard Spencer doesn't dog whistle. He goes, I think we should live in a white ethno state. It's not a dog whistle. It just comes out and says it. At least I respect that from him. He comes out and says what his opinion is. And the idea that there's historically white supremacists, you don't go back and listen to some Ku Klux Klan tape and hear them fucking dog whistling. They're telling you how they feel. So that's the number one thing you would think for all this talk of racism, that this is the biggest issue that we have to think about all the time. If someone asked you what the issue actually is, you'd have a bunch of stuff ready to prove it. Here's what they've got. Number one, dog whistling. Number two, Charlottesville. Of course. You know, the one example you have of where a couple hundred fucking, white nationalists march someplace. And then he goes, where neo-Nazis killed a woman. It's like, well, neo-Nazis didn't actually kill a woman. One guy fucking killed a woman when he ran into a crazy crowd with his car. And the truth about that whole thing, man, is that I don't exactly know what happened with that guy in his car, but you had a fucking crazy environment. It wasn't just neo-Nazi. You know, when you just say neo-Nazis killed a woman, it makes it sound almost like, like it evokes like a public lynching where a whole bunch of Klansmen or something like that went and grabbed someone and killed them in front of everybody, right? Like a bunch of neo-Nazis swarmed a Jewish community center and like beat some guy to death. It's like, no, here's what happened. A bunch of white nationalists planned a fucking march. a couple hundred of them. Then like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Antifa and counter protesters showed up. The cops didn't regulate the situation at all. There was fucking chaos in like everywhere. There were fights, there were pepper sprays, there were rocks being thrown, people hospitalized, people injured, and in that craziness, some guy fucking got in his car and just started running into the fucking crowd. It's terrible. By the way, the guy got convicted of murder 1, which seems crazy to me. Like, I'm no legal expert. I don't know about this stuff, but that seemed crazy to me. Murder 1 is usually like lying in wait or planning out a murder. Murder 2 or manslaughter is usually like murder 2 would be like in the heat of the moment you kill somebody. Manslaughter is like you didn't intend on killing anybody, but somebody ended up dying and it's your own fault that they died. I thought for sure this guy would get manslaughter or murder 2. I didn't think there was any way they'd get murder 1 on him, and they did. And, you know, by the way, nobody wants to stand up for any of those guys, but there's something pretty dangerous about the idea that someone had views we really hate, so we're going to, like, ratchet up the fucking the crime a little bit. Like, that's a little bit fucked up. And I know people will get, even if when I just say that, people, you know, will criticize me for being, like, too sympathetic to the alt-right or something like that. Strangely enough, when I say Obama shouldn't have, you know, drone killed American citizens, nobody ever says like I'm too sympathetic to Al Qaeda. It's weird because they're actually a far worse group than the alt-right. But anyway, so that's what happened there. Donald Trump didn't endorse any of that shit. He didn't fucking have anything to do with it. There's no, it's just like they had this one example, when this is what fucking pisses me off about the alt-right, is that they've basically accomplished nothing except handed the left a talking point to forever link anybody with this one thing. So it's like, yes, a couple hundred white nationalists marched like a year and a half ago, or a little less than that. It's like, okay, that's it. That's for all the time we talk about racism. That's your number 2. Number 1 is dog whistling. Number 2 is a couple hundred guys had a march. Like, have you even ever? You could.
Trump stood with the gay people with tiki torches. He's pro-gay.
Really? But by the way, he didn't even stand with them. He's like, if he actually had stood with them, I could see the right. He never even stood. He was like, whatever. He said there's bad people on both sides and good people on both sides, and it was a bad thing, and blah blah blah. Whatever. It was fine what he said, but. You know, you would just think for all of this talk of white supremacists or white nationalists, any of this stuff, for all of this talk, you could just easily have never met a white nationalist in your life. Forget if there wasn't the internet and you didn't find, like, in your life, how many white nationalists do you know? There's just not that many of them. By the way, I'm not even like, I don't mean that as a slight against them. I'm just saying that's the reality. I don't think there's that many anarcho-capitalists, you know? It's just, that's the truth. You could easily live your whole life and never meet one of them. But anyway, so that's number 2. And then the only substantive policy that she has comes in at number 3, which is, of course, immigration, which actually is all that any of this racism talk is about. But it doesn't sound good if you just say...
He's trying to get rid of our voting base.
Right. It doesn't sound good if you just go, well, I think he's a racist. Why is he racist? Because he wants to crack down on illegal immigration. It's like, that doesn't really sound that good. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Trump's ever actually made moves to cut down on legal immigration. I mean, okay, there was like the ban from those Muslim countries or whatever, but that even got overturned. But, you know, he's really never it's really illegal immigration, and specifically from South America. It's like, okay, but that makes you racist now? You can't just think like, I don't know, that the people who live here have a right to decide who comes in. That makes you racist? I mean, I understand there's libertarians who disagree on the policy or whatever, fine, but I'm just saying, like, racist? Is that fair? I don't know. Seems pretty crazy to me. But again, I do agree with what you said. I think that is, for her base, I think that was a home run. As fucking dumb as it is.
You know what else I loved in this interview? They were talking it up how she came from a half poor area, half nice area, and picked herself up by the bootstraps and went to Boston College.
Right. Except she was in the nice part of the poor area.
Yeah, she was in the nice part. Also, Boston College is not impressive. Yeah. I might have been able to get into Boston College. I barely went to high school, dude. I have friends that went there. That's where the dumbasses who have wealthy enough parents to pay for a private school go because they can't get into the Ivy League schools. That is
Right.
not a good school. There's nothing impressive about going there.
Well, I'll tell you. I mean, it's
It's the poor man's NYU.
yeah, but it's everything that there's something about her, man. It really is. It's everything that would work with her crowd. Like every answer she gives, you're almost like, yeah, this is perfect for you. Down to being a woman of color. I mean, like everything. She's got everything that's just red meat for her base.
Yeah.
Like,
I think there are two other moments, if you can find the highlights, that are worth playing. But the actual plan that she proposes for the
yes,
tax
I did want to
rate,
get into that. So if you could just Google, if you go Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez 70% tax, the video will probably come up. Yeah, because I thought that was interesting too.
and she uses I mean the words fair share, which is so clever. I just think the rich should pay their fair share.
Yeah, that was Obama's term too, which of course it's like the rich, of course, who pay like the vast majority of the income tax already. But when you just say fair share, it's just like, oh, well, who could be against that?
Also, the idea of that extracting more wealth from the people that are good at producing it is going to create a better outcome for anybody is just false.
Yeah,
It's just a false idea.
absolutely.
Or that they won't just move or figure out how to move their money around so that government can't get their hands on it. It's just,
even if they didn't. Even if they didn't move,
Right,
and
you'd
let's say
still-
they stay here and they produce the exact same amount, which, by the way, is insane to think would happen.
Right.
Insane to think that would happen. But even given you that, you are going to take from the most productive people and give to the most inefficient, unproductive monopoly of force in society. That's going to help? How exactly? Because what? We'll have more money to spend on social programs? Like we haven't spent enough? Like the trillions of dollars? You know, I say this often, but if you could go back to some socialist in like 1880, 1890 and tell them about how much wealth we would have redistributed and spent on social programs, they couldn't have imagined it. And for all that we've done, they're like, we need more. Like, because we'll always need more. All right, let's see. What do we got? What do we got here? All right, let's play it. No, I don't think this is...
You're talking about zero carbon
yeah,
emissions, no use of fossil fuels within 12 years?
That is the goal. It's ambitious. And
How is that possible? You're talking about everybody having to drive an electric car?
it's going to require a lot of rapid change that we don't even conceive as possible right now. What is the problem with trying to push our technological capacities
Pause it.
to...
Pause it. Oh, my God. Okay, so if you didn't get that, she's basically saying in a decade, we have to completely be off fossil fuels. Completely.
but she puts it on you. What's the problem
What
with
is
saying
the
that pushing...
problem? Well, okay, let me take a shot at that. You would destroy the country. You would destroy the economy. I don't know. What's the problem with people starving to death, with people living in extreme poverty? That's the problem. That is the problem with just saying we're going to get off fossil fuels. There we go. We're done with it. My God, it is unbelievable. I said it's like the Jordan Peterson. What does he always say? That everything's like a fighter jet. Like it's like some fucking 28-year-old who just goes, I think we could do this fighter jet better. I'm going to start rearranging some stuff in the engine. And you're like, oh, that's pretty complicated. It's pretty complicated. That was built by some pretty smart people. Not sure you just want to go rearranging everything. So that's it. Doesn't that just sound nice? In 10 years, we'll just get off fossil fuels. How about that? I mean, what's the problem?
If you just say it in a way that conveys how hot you are, how are people even going to argue
And I love
with
but
you?
It's unbelievable, this thing that she does where she's like, I know that it doesn't even seem possible right now, but we're going to need some very rapid change.
And my tits are so
wow.
perky.
By the way, that's worse than what she's proposing in terms of taxes. But anyway, let's play the rest of this clip because that's when she gets to the tax stuff.
the furthest extent possible.
This would require, though, raising taxes.
There's an
A lot more
element
than
where,
that.
people are going to have to start paying their fair share in taxes.
Do you have a specific on the tax rate?
You know, you look at our tax
All
rates
of it.
back in the 60s, and when you have a progressive tax rate system, your tax rate, let's say from 0 to $75,000 may be 10% or 15%, et cetera. But once you get to like the tippy tops, on your $10 millionth dollar, sometimes you
just pause
see
it
tax.
for a second. It literally sounds like someone trying to explain a progressive income tax to a 6th grade class. Who the fuck are you talking to you're talking to Anderson Cooper and like a CNN news audience. Like, yeah, no, I'm aware of how a progressive tax works. That wasn't really the question. This isn't you. She's almost saying it like this is a new proposal that nobody's done before. She's like, well, now here's how it works. Okay, you pay the rate on the money that you make, but then once you make more money than that, you get bumped up a rate. Now you don't pay that on every dollar. You only pay that on the money you make past there. By the way, she's talking to Anderson Cooper, who is a guy who probably makes $10 million a year, who's been paying this for a long, long time. Like, he's like, yeah, no, I know, bitch. I know how it works.
Anderson, we're at the tippy top.
And then she goes, up at the tippy top. I mean, it's literally like you're talking to a 6th grade class and just like, oh, let me put this in like a cute way. Well, let's say your mom gives you some jelly beans, okay? And then she says, after every 5 jelly beans, you have to pay me $2 per jelly bean. Like, what the fuck? This is a CNN. Oh no, it's not CNN. It's a CBS interview, bigger than CNN. But this is a person in Congress talking about her plan to literally overhaul the U.S. economy. Just roll the dice on maybe we will bankrupt this whole fucking thing. We're just gonna start having a 70% tax rate. You know how they were debating between whatever, like 39 and 35%? I say 70. Let's go for 70. And like, oh, what's the problem with that? Well, it's just, pay your fair share. Pay your fair share. That's her point. Anyway, let's play the rest of the clip.
Rates as high as 60 or 70%. That doesn't mean all $10 million are taxed
we know.
At an extremely high rate, but it means that as you climb up this ladder, you should be contributing more.
What you are talking about, just big picture, is a radical agenda compared to the way politics is done right now.
Well, I think that it only has ever been radicals that have changed this country. Abraham Lincoln made the radical decision to sign the Emancipation Proclamation. Franklin Delano Roosevelt made the radical decision to embark on establishing programs like Social Security. That is radical.
Pause it for a second. Okay, so let's just go over a little bit of history here. Abraham Lincoln declared war on his own people, slaughtered hundreds of thousands of people, locked up journalists, and suspended the First Amendment. Okay? He also conscripted an army in the North to do that, kind of like slavery, like forced people into go fight in war, which is actually kind of worse than cotton picking slavery, because it's slavery either way, but instead of the job being picking cotton, the job is murdering and getting murdered. So it's pretty horrible. It was the bloodiest war in American history still to this day. And, and then FDR, he also indiscriminately killed civilians and, rounded up Asians and fucking, interned them and stuff like that. So just saying, it's kind of interesting that her two heroes were piece of shit, like, guilty of crimes against humanity. Anyway, just saying that. So radicals do shape history. She's right, but she just happened to pick two particularly evil ones. And FDR's New Deal, I mean, this is a crazy thing where it's taught to everyone in school that the New Deal pulled us out of the Depression, but it is demonstrably, factually not true. It's factually not true. It kept us in the Depression. It made the Depression worse and longer. But as you have said, not the most ineffective answer. This bitch is getting scarier and scarier, I'll tell you.
She's good.
She is. She is good, despite how awful you people who listen to this podcast probably think she is. She actually is pretty goddamn good.
And I mean, the last highlight to watch would be the green energy thing.
Okay, let's pull that up, see if we can find it. That I don't know if I remember that one offhand. Was that was different than what she was saying there? Well, we're going to get.
I thought it was I thought at some point she mentioned her plan for a green energy New Deal and getting off. That was that with the fossil fuels.
Yeah, I think she just mentioned the fossil fuels and the New Deal.
All right,
I think that was it. But anyway, so let's just briefly to say so what she talked about with the when she says the 70% tax rate, and she goes, well, we had really high tax rates like this back in the 60s or whatever. It's like I don't know. I mean, I think this point has just been smacked down enough times, but no, what we had was a very high tax rate that nobody ever paid. And if you look at the effective tax rates, they weren't much different than they are today. There's not, look, the idea that you will go back to history and find a time when people had these huge, this very, very high income tax rate. It's just not true. I mean, first of all, it wasn't like the levels are today. These were people who were making hundreds of thousands of dollars in the 60s, which basically didn't exist. It was very, very rare. I think my grandfather, he may have made like, I think I'm just about right with this. Like he may have made like $11,000-$12,000 a year. Like that might have been his salary. And he, for that, like owned a house, sent 2 kids to college, would, like vacation in the summers, you know what I mean? Like play poker on the weekends. Like that was how Americans lived at the time, and was never buried in debt. Like had a mortgage, but wasn't like buried in fucking debt like that. And that was like pretty normal at the time. He worked a factory job, and this is what people did basically. The idea that people were making that type of money regularly, I mean, it was basically non-existent. And then even for the people who were making money like that, there were tons of deductions, and basically nobody paid those high rates anyway. And bigger than that, the idea that you're going to extract this type of wealth. Here's the things, right? Number one, you're not getting at the super wealthy with an income tax. This is just everybody who actually knows what they're talking about knows this. You don't get it. The super, super wealthy don't even make their money off income tax. They make their money off capital gains and off, like assets. And the idea that you're going to get at them through a 70% income tax, these people, even if they do get high incomes, these are the ones who can afford an army of tax lawyers and accountants. They're going to find a way to pay as little as they possibly can. Also, the other obvious point is that people will move their capital. I mean, if they were just taking this money in huge salaries, they're just going to move out of the United States of America. They're going to move into different, like different currencies and things like that, which is easier to do now in 2019 than ever before. And then, of course, there's the argument that you're just, as you pointed out before, that you're just taking from the most productive people who actually create wealth and jobs and giving it to the government that does nothing but destroy them. There's, to go out and say, do you not understand who will be hit by something like a 70% top marginal rate would be, the person who owns a small business who makes $400,000 a year. And all it does is discourage that person from opening up a new location because, I've already hit my $400,000 limit. Now I'm only going to be making 30% of whatever I bring in. Think about it like that. Think about in a business, what a difference it would make. Let's say you're already bringing in, because lots of businesses file as individuals. So just even looking at those businesses, let's say you're already bringing in $400,000 a year. You're thinking about expanding and hiring a few more people and opening a new location or whatever it might be, whatever the business might be. Do you think if you took away 70% of the profit, that might change your decision on whether or not you expand? Is it possible? Is anyone who's ever run a business or know someone who's ever run a business, do you think 70% of your profit would make somewhat of a difference in your decision making? I think it might. It might. And the other thing is, for all of this, for all of the destruction that it would cause, right? To institute a 70% top marginal tax rate. Now, this chick is like playing with breaking the country. So for all the damage it would cause, what does it get us? How much money would that actually produce? Well, the estimates, which are completely flawed, because the estimates basically assume that everyone would do exactly the same thing they're doing right now, okay? Which, of course, as we know, is insane. And it's really crazy that anyone could deny that. Like, everybody knows, even these left-wing people, right? They know if you tax something, you get less of it. And if you subsidize something, you get more of it than you would under the same conditions. So this is why someone even someone on the left, they'll support like a tax on cigarettes, and they'll support subsidizing green energy. Because they know if you tax cigarettes, you're going to get less people smoking cigarettes than you otherwise would have had. It's just the law of economics. And then, of course, they subsidize green energy because they know you'll get more green energy if you subsidize it, right? Okay, well, if you're going to heavily tax productivity, you're going to get less productivity. That's just an economic fact. It's an economic reality. However, in these projections, they'll act as if everyone produced exactly the same thing, but we took 70% of the top marginal tax rate. Let's grant them that. Let's grant them the impossibility that everyone would do the exact same thing, even with a drastically higher tax rate. You know how much money you get for that? It's like $700 billion over 10 years. That's what their estimate is. It's nothing. It's less than a fourth of 1 year's budget. The Medicare for All plan that she has, I think they said it costs something like $32 trillion over that same time frame. So even if she's going to wreck the economy and not even get these programs for it, I'm not even touching getting off fossil fuels because that's just fucking retarded. That's just insane, man. Getting off of fossil fuels, and it's just a given that we would go with renewable energy. But the problem is renewable energy is way more expensive than that shit. So now you're not even touching the amount of money it's going to cost to power the entire 320 million people in America by renewable energy.
We're going to be sucking each other's farts out of each other's assholes. That's what we're going to be doing.
Well, there's Rob Bernstein's plan for the economy.
We got to get the word out there. She's lying, and she's going to kill us all. That's how you combat this.
She's but I will say the whole thing. My takeaways are she's insane, but she's good.
Yeah.
Now, luckily, she can't run for president or anything like that for a little while. So hopefully, this whole moment will change.
Why is that true?
You got to be 35, I believe.
Really?
Yeah.
How old is she?
I think 28.
Yeah, and her tits will be all saggy by then. We'll be good.
Come on,
everyone will be over her. Someone far hotter than 28 will come around talking about saving whales and socialism, and they won't be able to run. That's all we need. We just got to keep finding these hot chicks to come out of the woodwork.
It's amazing where, like, if you, I mean, it's kind of a stupid example, but I guess it means that but you see how this, like, these things can catch on when they just sound nice. But, like, the plastic straw ban, like, if you look into that,
it's the dentist. They want your teeth to fucking rot. That's what's going on.
It might
be.
Big
dentists.
Yeah, big dentistry. But if you look into it, like, there's no sane argument for banning plastic straws. Like, the plastic straws make up like a fraction of the problem with plastic in the oceans. It's not even a problem. It's just like this thing kind of sounds nice. It caught on, and now it's like just fucking catching fire. And people are just doing it everywhere. And there is something scary about these ideas that are like, it's like, okay, and this is true for all of the climate change stuff in general. It's like they scare you with climate change, then they go, here's something we should do. Let's start doing that. But the truth is that even by their own projections, if you look at the plan of what to do, it will cause real pain. And you go, and what will this actually do toward the solution? And they're like, oh, it maybe takes care of like 0.5% of the problem. And you're like, wait, what? So, you know, like in France where they have this gas tax, right? They have this gas tax that the people were like fucking revolting over. And they're like, we're doing it in the name of you know, tackling climate change. And you're like, okay, but theoretically, if France were to get completely off of gasoline, what effect would that actually have on the planet? Like, China keeps doing exactly what they're doing. America keeps doing exactly what they're doing. Russia's doing what they're doing. But France gets off gasoline. What does that do to climate change? The answer? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So all these people that are like furious about the gas tax in France are like, we have to suffer in reality for your theoretical abstraction of what would be a good idea that won't actually do anything. It's like, look, man, people are willing to sacrifice a lot if they believe in the cause. It's actually scary. It's way too much. Way too much people are willing to sacrifice everything if they believe in the cause. Just look at these crazy state wars that we've had. But you're asking them to sacrifice so you can feel like a good person. So you can go to the next G20 summit and go, well, look what we did here in France. Aren't we noble people? And you have to suffer in real time for that. This is all, man, I don't know. It's crazy. She's crazy, but she's crazy like a fox. All right, we got to wrap up there. Everybody, go check out the Run Your Mouth podcast, Rob Bernstein. Follow Rob on Twitter, @RobbieTheFire. Thank you guys for listening. As always, we will be back on Friday with a brand new episode. Peace out. All right, guys, that's our show for today. You know, we got 20 great shows here at GasDigitalNetwork.com. The one we're going to play a clip from today is Comedy Fight Club. If you love the roast battling stuff, you're going to really love this podcast, so make sure you check it out and check out all the great shows here at GasDigitalNetwork.com. Thanks for listening.
Your next fight Introducing first, he looks like he practices kissing on his pillow, Bobby Sheehan! And his opponent looks like a leprechaun midway through transitioning, Jessica Clayton! 30 seconds on the clock. This fight or child battle begins now.
All right, so I spent hours looking at Jess's Facebook page, reading all of her tweets, watching every Instagram story. Anyway, later, Matt asked me if I wanted to roast her. Jess looks like she has porcelain dolls to practice drowning her kids in the tub. Jess's mom abandoned her as a child, which means the first room she walked was a nursery.
Jessica Clayton.
Bobby Sheehan, you unfuckable goblin. Bobby messaged me before this and told me I could ask him questions. I was like, I think I'll go off looks on this one. No, really, it's super cool to be roasting my first Nintendo Wii avatar. Bobby's a recovered alcoholic. He knew he had to stop when he got to the bottom of the tequila bottle and saw a worm banging his mom.
Unfuckable goblin. Not like all those fuckable goblins out there. Yeah. Chris Crespo. Fight Club is the winner of round one. Bobby Sheehan. Or is the winner of round one, Jessica Clayton? Close, but winner of round one, Bobby Sheehan! 30 seconds on the clock. Round two starts now.
Thank you, the cuck of the Irish. Yeah, my mom had me when she was 19, and then she left, which means we've both made women leave for coming too early. Look, there's a reason they don't name hurricanes Bobby. There's a 0% chance you'll wet anyone's major area. Look, Bobby, I'll leave you with a hot tip. Women don't want to sleep with someone who needs to be burped after eating pussy, okay?
Bobby Sheehan.
All right, Jess, you pedophile's wet nightmare. Jess suffers from bouts of acne. It shows up every once in a while, but not enough to affect her life. I'm sorry, that's her mom. Jess claims she's a twin, but really it's because the only time she gets laid is when the guy's seeing double. One more? Oh. No, you know, actually, I don't want to do this anymore. Thank you. That was my impression of Jess's mom.
Fight Club is the winner of round two. Jessica Clayton. Or is the winner of round 2 Bobby Sheehan? This fight's gonna go to sudden death overtime! One joke apiece. Overtime starts now.
Jess looks like she only shaves her pussy to make voodoo dolls of her exes.
Jess Clayton.
Bobby always has this look on his face like his babysitter told him she'll show a titty if he goes to sleep.
Fight Club is the winner of this fight. Bobby Sheehan. Or is the winner of this fight Jessica Clayton? Winner, Jess Clayton!